Welcome to the Higher Expertise. I'm Israel Dennis with David Williams. David, welcome to the show. The first time here.
Thank you.
Yeah, we want to jump right in. I know that you have a wealth of knowledge on supply chain, so we want to talk a little bit about what is a requisition, why they are needed for some of the audience that don't know what that is, and then go into a little bit about what is supply chain and why is supply chain important in the enterprise and organization. So having said that, let's jump right into it. What is a requisition, David?
A requisition is a demand to procure something, and it also can be a service, an item or a service. Requisition typically, hopefully, takes the form of an electronic form in your ERP system. I've seen the requisitions being paper formed where they're routed around for processing, but it's a demand for goods or services.
So essentially, like when I think of requisition, I think of a request.
Right.
Someone initiated a request for something, either a product or a service, and then they plan to buy that product or service. Is that correct?
Exactly. Requisition obviously contains a lot of detail based on the type of item or service it is to aid the approver in getting it approved.
Right, right. And in our case, we're talking specifically with regards to Infor and Lawson, but this really applies to any ERP package.
Applies to any ERP system.
SAP, PeopleSoft, they all use supply chain, correct?
Exactly.
We jumped right into requisition, but let's back up a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about, or let's talk about why supply chain is important at the organization level.
Sure.
Generally, organizations want to track their supplies and they want to track inventory. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. I consider supply chain is really associated closely with operations management. There's so much that's built into that concept: strategic planning, budgeting. To me, it's also the foundation of your financial transactions. Requisition is the beginning of the procure-to-pay system. Supply chain can take the form of so many things. It's typically the movement of goods or services through a chain, all the way through distribution. It also entails logistics, movement of goods, providing services, the whole cycle, end-to-end cycle. It has a good name, chain.
Right,
which
supply
is
chain
everything's linked together.
From finance to logistics,
Exactly.
warehousing to everything, and this the supply chain certainly has an impact on financials, right? You mentioned before that it has an impact on your goods and services on the books, you know.
Yes, inventory is one of the largest in many organizations. It's one of the largest assets on the balance sheet. It's significant. It has a lot of auditor scrutiny. The American Institute of CPAs, GAAP, puts a lot of emphasis on what is that inventory, how is it valued, how is it kept. Also, there's another concept that's on the balance sheet. That's the liability R&I. That's part of the supply chain when you receive something you haven't been invoiced yet.
Got it. And I know we're going to be talking about supply chain and a couple other segments. So let's go back to requisition. So the requisition is kind of a request from a department, from someone to buy either product or services.
Right. Yeah, it can take two paths, and in healthcare especially, it can be a demand on the storeroom, which means the storeroom stocks the item I've requisitioned for. That will go through the warehouse application. It will create a pick ticket for the inventory technician to pull from the bin and deliver to the department. If it's not stocked, it's a demand on the vendor. It will go through, we'll talk about the special requisitions where it creates, you got more detail, you got a vendor information, more accounting information. This will go through the procurement function, through the buyer. It'll create a purchase order or a procurement request.
Right, and in terms of healthcare, you know, that could be I need something for IT, or it could be I need an item for surgery that's happening.
Absolutely, it could be a capital good, bill only, blanket orders. It could be types of services. It entails many different ways to procure something.
Right. And in the term of manufacturing, if let's say, for example, a client is building syringes or they're building a product, they may need some items for the different orders that they're putting together. So they initiate the request.
Exactly.
It's an internal request. Those items get pulled and then delivered to that department, correct?
Exactly. It could be an item that's only used for a special type of medical procedure.
A surgery, for example.
Yes, right. So it's there's a lot of different paths it can take.
Let's talk now briefly about why they are needed. Why is a requisition needed, right? Some people may not know the whole purpose of the whole requisition concept.
Well, the obvious thing is requisition needed to get something or a service, but behind that, requisition serves as a really good control mechanism. It serves as a documentation of what was requested and actually purchased. It also gives a very good control over the budgetary process. If I request something that's beyond the budget, then the approver can question that. You know, do we need it? Are we getting it at the right price? It falls in the area of strategic sourcing. The trend that a requester's been purchasing, does that fit in with the costs that are available that we could have had that we didn't take advantage of? So cost history, internal controls. Auditors are very interested in who requested it, and then that trail that it goes through that makes sure it gets approved appropriately. If you don't have that control, you're probably familiar with the term maverick spending. You have individuals not doing necessarily anything wrong, but just going outside the budget and in many cases wasting money.
And in some cases, they may also be running some trend analysis, right?
Exactly.
If we're buying a bunch of one item, maybe we go and negotiate better deals with.
Yeah, so maybe we want to stock that item. Have we purchased it over this period of time? Do we want to stock it, and at what price? Negotiate with the vendor.
Right. And let's talk briefly about healthcare in specific, right? If let's say I'm buying another hospital, another chain of hospitals, one of the things they analyze is how much they're buying, what are they getting, what kind of agreements they have in place.
Exactly. Part of the supply chain is accounts payable. So a typical question from an accounting manager or a procurement manager is, what is our spend? What is our total spend by category, by item, or total spend? That's used to obviously compare to the budget, but it's also used for strategic sourcing and price negotiations.
That's perfect. That leads me right into the next topic. The next point that I want to talk about is, how is it processed? How is the requisition process? You mentioned approvers, you mentioned requesters. So there's a process in place that it has to follow, and that's just the beginning of the whole supply chain.
Exactly. So the typical process is requesters are approved and set up in security, and they are tied to an accounting unit or a department or departments. They can request for multiple accounting units.
So you can have a requester for IT, a requester for surgery, or whatever it is.
Exactly. A requester can request for multiple departments, even multiple companies. So once that's set up, they're tied to a requesting location. That requesting location carries the accounting unit or the departmental code that's important in the accounting distribution.
And that's only to order for that specific location,
Exactly,
correct?
right.
And it could be multiple locations, so you can have multiple, accounting units.
Right. So once the requisition is created, it's in an unreleased status, and they release it, and then it goes to the approval hierarchy. So typically based on the dollar amount, it will go through that hierarchy till each approver with their dollar limit approves it, and then it gets processed. The approver can reject it or send it back. but it follows that chain of
Are there
approval.
multiple levels of approvers? Maybe level 1 just approves anything under 10,000.
Yeah, level 1 could be someone that approves up to 1,000. So you have these dollar thresholds for each approver. Obviously, in healthcare or any organization, you can be procuring something for $50,000, $100,000. Then you want multiple approvers to sign off on it.
And then who determines who are the approvers? Is that someone that the executive level decides?
Yeah.
How is that set up, you know?
I think it's a combination of the executive levels. They need to go through some training. They need to be familiar with the budget, obviously. So it's a combination of finance and IT. It's set up in security as an approver built in the process flow mechanism application. And so it's just very similar to a requester. Who do we want to request? The manager signs a yes, and then who do we want to approve? The manager above that approves that approver.
With
Approves
multiple
the approver.
levels, with
Yes.
multiple levels.
With multiple levels.
And I'm sure they're going to have different conditions. These approvers approve these things, these approvers approve the other thing.
That's a possibility, right?
Can the approvers be cross-functional or cross-department? Like, let's say I have, you know how you mentioned that you have requesters that have multiple departments, multiple accounting units. Are the approvers set up the same way, or are they set up slightly
They're
different?
typically signed up, per accounting unit, but I also have seen approvers approve for multiple accounting units or departments. You're right.
That's good. That's good. I know we're running long on the segment today, but this is a very interesting topic. I know we're going to talk more about requisitions and supply chain and the whole process. I want to thank you for joining me on the show today. I want to remind our audience to reach out to us if they have any questions with regards to requisition or supply chain. We offer consulting and managed services expertise, and we want to help you not just with requisition, but anything that's related to Infor. David, thank you for being part of the segment today. I'm Israel Dennis with David Williams. Until next time, this is Higher Expertise.